Chapter 141, Hidden Feelings. The rewards from the palace were all neatly stacked in her house. There are gold and silver satin, and there are also jade and agate. All of them are from Shenzai, the eldest princess of Liang. Jiang Xuning returned to the house from outside. Tang and Lian the two little girls, had not seen their own girl for a long time, seeing that she had lost a lot of weight when she came back, and her complexion was not very good. She was simply in shape, and she couldn't help but feel distressed. The left sentence asks, and the right sentence reads. Jiang Xuning didn't answer a word, and after they waited for the wash, she didn't even ask about the current situation in Jingzhou, so she sent them out and sat in the house alone. A bright candle is lit on the desk. Jiang Xuning stared at the little jumping firelight for a long time, and a drop of candle tears fell down the edge of the candle unwrappingly, and she blinked. It's silent. She got up and walked over to the dressing table, her unpowdered face reflected in the candlelight mirror. There was a soft pop. It was she who opened the long-held makeup and opened the bottom compartment, which was wrapped in a pink and white silk handkerchief with a fine Hessian green jade bracelet. Ning Ning, Aunt begs you something. If you go back to the house and see the eldest girl, help me give this to her. Wan Niang's sad face when she was dying flashed back to her eyes. She squeezed her hand hard, and her eyes that had rolled in the world widened, as if she was afraid that she would not agree, and as if full of guilt and pain. But for whom? Jiang Xuning recalled, but she was never sure. She wished there was a star of her own. But until Wan Yang ran out of breath, the servants from the capital broke her hand that was still holding her, and she didn't wait for the answer she wanted. Is there nothing left for me? She took the bracelet out of her makeup, turned her back to the candle on the desk, looked at it for a long time, and after all, a line of tears rolled down her eyes, but a sarcastic smile overflowed on her lips. Fingers slowly tightened the bracelet. For a split second she wanted to drop the thing. As if it never existed. But the moment he raised his hand, he felt that he was unbearable and despicable, and the more and more ridiculous sadness set off by the reflection of the two phases. TSHH. So I really laughed out loud. Jiang Xuning finally threw the bracelet on the table and slowly lay back on the bed, but she couldn't sleep with her eyes open. Asterisk. The capital in the new year is a lively time. The Lantern Festival will be open for 3 days in a row, and the relatives will go to the relatives, and the street market will go to the market. Although the weather is cold, it is rare to walk everywhere with people. Tea houses and restaurants, there are many old men who walk birds and fight crickets on the street on weekdays, and it is inevitable that they will be foolish when they sit down. In fact, it's just trivial. But this year there was something unusual. Lucien was deflated by Siewei last night, and he didn't sleep well all night, so he simply got up early in the morning, preparing to go to the Shuxiang Inn to see how the silver stocks of Ren's salt farm were rising. It's just too early, and the news of silver stocks hasn't arrived yet. He asked for a bowl of tea, sat upstairs, just took a handful of melon seeds, and listened to the lively talk of the people downstairs. Did you hear that? I heard. I've heard that, too. Haha, isn't this just that Jiren has his own natural appearance, and good people will have good rewards after all? Hey, what kind of dumb riddle are you playing in the morning? You don't know yet. What you said makes me confused. It's because I'm lonely and unheard, and there has been a big incident in the capital recently. Is it the one that exterminated the heavenly sect? It's a bit of a thing, but it's not this one. What the hell? Ha ha ha, Master Zhou only arrived in the capital 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know if it's normal. You can be kind, don't make fun of him. However, this Ding Fei-san is really unbelievable, and he can come back alive. I don't know how much suffering and how many sins I have suffered outside over the years. Poor Bida Temple, the 300 righteous children's mounds. The old man Joe sitting at the bottom really became more and more confused the more he listened, and he couldn't help but ask what happened. Only then did the older one explain to him with a bit of ostentatiousness. So it was only before and after King Pingnan's rebellion was told that year. Lucien listened, it was nothing more than that. King Pingnan entered the capital, entered the palace, and did not catch the prince at that time, so he came up with a cruel way to arrest all the children of the appropriate age in the capital to identify, and after finding that all of them were not, he used the lives of these children to coerce the queen and the prince who were hiding in the capital to appear. There are a total of 300 people. Where can you see your children like this when you are a father? The city was filled with the sound of weeping and wailing. It was a big winter, it was really pitiful, the common people were kneeling on the long street, begging the rebels to raise their noble hands, and it was good to arrest them, not to arrest the children. Ouch, I also listened to it back then, I was really worried. You said that if it is a person, who cannot move a little compassion after listening to it. It can be seen that the 8th grandson of the old king of Pingnan is a brute. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is a nobleman, how can he be held hostage by others? If he falls into the hands of the anti-party, won't the anti-party's treacherous plan succeed, and won't our great Cotter dynasty be finished? That week, the old man was stunned. Isn't it the Dingfei Shizi you said? Isn't it? At that time, Xiao Shizi was only 7 years old, his father was now the new prince of the Xiao family of the Dingguo mansion, and his mother was the pearl of the old marquis of the Yanji mansion in the past. When the emperor was there, the grandfather of the country had already asked him to be crowned the prince, and he would definitely inherit the prince's mansion in the future. Before the accident in the Yanji marquis mansion, you listened to that Yan Xiaohe was amazing, right? But if you want me to say, it's still 8 zhang away from the Dingfei prince back then. The listener couldn't help but stir. Lucien listened happily upstairs. This man spoke eloquently, as if he had seen it with his own eyes. That's pretty much right, but it's just the man's piano. Frowned slightly, and he couldn't help scolding in his heart, people are really angry compared to people. Downstairs, everyone pricked up their ears. Even the shopkeeper forgot about the plan and raised his eyes to look. The person who spoke took a sip of tea to moisten his throat before continuing. Back then, Dingfei Shizi was very popular with the queen mother in the palace, and he was in the palace with Mrs. Yan when the accident happened, so he naturally protected his royal highness and hid with his mother. Otherwise, how can it be said that Xiao Yan and the 2 clans were loyal and courageous, and did their best? At that time, on the one hand, the lives of 300 innocent children, and on the other hand, His Royal Highness the Prince, who was in danger, was only 7 years old at that time, and Dingfei Shizi, who was only 7 years old at that time, actually took the initiative to stand up and change his robe with His Royal Highness the Prince. There were many people in the audience who were surprised and said obviously they all guessed a few points. The man said, yes, this is actually a method of Li Daido's Wang. Dingfei Shizi has been walking in the palace since he was a child, and the eunuchs all know him, and he is also familiar with the etiquette in the palace, and he is 7 years old, which is the same age as His Royal Highness the Prince, who is 8 years old, is not far apart in size, and is extremely alert. If he pretended to be the prince, took the initiative to appear in front of the rebels of King Pingnan, and let King Pingnan release those children, it would be a matter of creation. Master Zhou remembered something, but those stalls in the White Pagoda Temple. Someone answered, King Pingnan and other extremely vicious people, once they think that they have the crown prince, where will they leave others alive? When the reinforcements entered the city, they couldn't be blackmailed, only to find out that it was a fake one in their hands, and in a fit of rage, they naturally killed it. I only pity a 7-year-old child, this Highland jade tree has not yet grown, and it has died in this accident. The people of Xiaoyan and the two clans dug and searched for a long time in the pile of frozen corpses at the gate of the palace, and only then did they find the dragon pendant and the clothes he wore when he pretended to be the prince, and the rest were some stumps and broken bones, but I don't know whose family it was. Iniquity. I heard that in those months, children cried in the capital until midnight, which was terrifying. It wasn't until the imperial court took the bones of these poor children to the Bida temple, buried them next to the Cheyin pavilion, set up a forest of steles, engraved their names and surnames, and asked the monks in the temple to chant the scriptures day and night for 7,749 months, that the anger of this unjust death was gone, and the souls of these children were overspent. But now the Son of the world is alive. The man obviously thought that this was a strange thing, and couldn't help but smack his lips and say, "No. I got up early this morning and spread it all over the capital. I can't believe that there is such a thing in the world that comes back from the dead. But it's reasonable to think about it. After all, Mrs. Yan said that she didn't find anyone back then. There are clothes and jade pendants, and when the snow melts, the flesh and blood will already be blurred when people touch it. Where can they still recognize the appearance of a person, and whose children look similar? I heard that it was very miserable. It seems that it fell into the hands of the heavenly sect, thanks to the young master of the dynasty, Lord Xia. This time he rescued people. It can be seen that the sky has eyes, such loyal and good ministers. In the end, they are blessed with great lives. What is believed in the market is the word good fortune." Hearing what the man said, they all nodded their heads to express their gratitude, but some were a little happy for the Stingfei prince. Only Lucien, who was sitting upstairs, laughed lukewarmly, and suddenly interjected, "The brother downstairs seems to know a lot. How can he see it with his own eyes? Could it be that he was on an errand in the palace back then?" The man hadn't expected anyone to pick on him. When I raised my head and saw that it was Boss Lu of the secluded fence pavilion, I couldn't help but look up, hurriedly got up and arched my hand, salivating and laughing. "Hey, isn't this also hearsay? Let's talk to everyone and have fun." But you really didn't guess wrong. I heard the news from a eunuch who had been on an errand in the palace when he was released. However, he was not in good health, and not long after he came out of the palace with money, he died of a disease. It's a shame to say that my man can make a fortune now, thanks to the money he left behind back then. This person is not a big man among the merchants in the capital. After all, under the feet of the Son of Heaven, there are many powerful people. It's just that no one thought that there was this layer of origin in the middle, and they couldn't help but be a little surprised. But there were also some people who knew him, and knew that what he said was not false. Although Lucien is a businessman, one is a Jinchi and the first who worked as an errand in the Hanlin Academy, and the other is secretly doing some bullshit for Xie, and his heart is twisted and turned, which is really not as simple as the person below. Although the man knew what to say, he heard the clue. The eunuch who was on an errand in the palace knew about this and released it. Didn't he die quickly? He swallowed another melon seed and raised his eyebrows with interest. If you want to say so, then this must not be the Son of the world who was with his mother, Mrs. Yan, and it stands to reason that the Son of the world took the initiative to sacrifice himself to save the Savior. Mrs. Yan should know and agree. But how did I hear that soon after the siege of the capital was lifted, Mrs. Yan fell out with Xiao Qiaogong and went back to the home mansion directly, and the Xiao Yan family never had any contact? The man down was stunned. The others couldn't help but be shocked. I just heard people talk about it before. How could I be asked this question, and I really think this thing is a bit weird? Someone said tentatively, Boss Lu looks at it and knows something secret. Lucien rolled his eyes. I want to know what else to ask you for. This look could not be more real, and everyone was relieved, and then they thought, where can their ordinary people know about the affairs of the heavenly family? The only thing that can be pitted is the 300 innocent children buried in the snow. Asterisk. Early in the morning, the cold sunlight rose from the east and shone obliquely on the white marble railing in front of the imperial palace. The ministers have arrived, bowing their heads and standing solemnly. Emperor Shenlang was wearing a black 5-clawed golden dragon robe, wearing a 12-crowned crown, sitting on the dragon chair behind the imperial case, and his face was a little obscure in the Jinluan palace. Xie Wei is in the lower left Xiao Wenchen column. It is rare to wear a neat and majestic court robe, compared to the ordinary Taoist robe, a little less secluded and distant, but it still does not damage his abyssal and lofty spirit, but it seems a little more sharp. But it's still not too much, just right. With a 3-point smile on his face, he only raised his eyes to look at Shenlang, and reminded in a light voice, "Holy Lord, the prince has been waiting outside the hall for a long time."